Hello, happy Tuesday. I am back from yesterday. First thing I did is I actually went ahead and put some labels on the folders that I did yesterday. I think I'd said I was going to wait, but I just want to get them labeled for now. And then I went ahead and took a little magic eraser and some elbow grease to get off some of the marker and crayon stains from that white table, which are pretty messy. It's still pretty messy, but it's fine. It's going to get dirty all year long. I have to remember that. Today, I wanted to go ahead and walk you through what the win block looks like in my classroom, exactly how I set it up, some of the rotations that we often do, and just kind of see how that works. So if you are ready for this video, give it a thumbs up, make sure you are subscribed, and let's dive in. First, I thought I could go over the schedule for the year. It is slightly different than last year. So our day starts at 8:25. That's when kids come in. I think teacher contract hours are like 8:15. I'm always here at like 7:30, so I don't even know when the official start time is, but they come in, they will either have some morning work or morning play to do on their desks or over in that area to do some free play. I mentioned in a what I'm keeping and what I'm changing video that for the morning playtime, I'm going to offer like 2 tubs a day that they can play with so they don't just have access to everything. Then we will go into our morning meeting, Haggerty into phonics. All of that is the same as last year. So that will kind of be right there. Last year, right after phonics, we had our snack and recess, but we actually pushed that back a little so we could get writing right after phonics. And I think that will be really good because we will have students practicing their encoding and dictation and then taking that and going right into writing, I think will be beneficial. Then we have our snack and recess. When students come in from snack and recess, we will have calendar and math. That was another thing we wanted to move from last year because we just did not have enough math time because it was squished in between our lunch and our specials. So now we actually have our win block during that time. And I think that will be better. We only had a 45-minute calendar and math time last year. Now it is 60 minutes, and our win block is always 45 minutes anyway, so that should be a lot better. So calendar, math, lunch, recess, win, then we have specials into our reading block, and our reading block is where we will have a read aloud, and we talk about vocabulary, comprehension, and all that. And then we go into our literacy centers, which I have a whole video about. And then it's either social studies or science, depending on the day or the month, like whatever unit we are in, and then jobs and pack up. So that is what our schedule will look like. But today I want to talk mostly about WIN. And again, this is a 45-minute period and it stands for what I need. I hopped back to my back table because it has my computer and I want to pull up the slides to kind of go over with you. But the way that the what I need or win block is set up is nice because every teacher can kind of do it however works for them. And it's called what I need because during this time, this is when interventionists, special ed teachers, any kind of services that students might need, PT, OT, they're all scheduled during this time. So first grade, the entire first grade team has their win block at the same time. And kindergarten does and second grade does. And this type of block schedule allows for, again, all those specialists and interventionists and everybody that's needed to be able to kind of schedule their services during this time. That way nobody's missing a core instructional subject. Also during this time, like I said, PT, OT, all those services students will get, speech, but then also an interventionist might pull for that double dip. So I did talk about in my literacy centers video where I went over how my literacy centers are run and how I do, or when I do small groups. I mentioned that I do the same 2 small groups during that time every single day. So those 2 small groups are usually my lower reading groups. And I do that because that makes sure they essentially get that double dip of instruction or that double dip of extra intervention service as needed to catch them up to where they need to be. So they will meet with me for a small group. And then during this time, not all of those students, but many of them will get pulled from the reading interventionist to get that extra dose of reading, right? So during the win time now is where I meet with my other groups, my other 2 or 3 groups that I have not met with during that time. I pull them here during this time. So this is 45 minutes, and depending on the day, I don't just do reading groups for the whole time. I'll do like math groups. I will do a writing catch-up station, kind of whatever they need, and that tends to be pretty flexible. The only part that's not flexible is the reading groups that I do have to meet. So whether I have 2 more groups or 3 more groups, I spread those out throughout the week. I don't necessarily see every group every single day. Like my highest reading group, I see 2 to 3 times per week. Usually my middle group I also see about 3 times per week, and then I sometimes will try to squeeze in another little group that I see at least 4 times a week. So each day with a 45-minute block, I have like 2 15-minute periods, and then I also have a third like 10-minute, with transition time, chunk of time where I can pull a student one-on-one to catch up with some things. I can pull a writing group, I can pull a math group. I can do whatever they need during that time, which is really nice. So in order for me to do that, that means all my other students need to have a purpose and a task and something that they're doing to keep them occupied and working on something that's beneficial to them while I'm pulling my group. So that is what I will dive into, how we do that. I'll share the slides in a minute and I'll show you what it looks like, but the way my win block is set up is essentially a must do, may do type of thing. Now, some people were saying they do their literacy centers that way, and that is great, but one of the reasons I don't do my literacy centers that way is because I do this must do, may do structure during win time. I could definitely do both, but my literacy centers, I like the rotation each day of how it's working out right now, so I don't plan to change that. But every single day in WIN is a must do, may do, and then it's depending on what category they're kind of working through. So let me show you that, but before I do, I just want to explain that as students complete the must do assignment for the day, they get to move on to their fun independent activity. Now, one of the fun activities that students get to do is IXL, and I am so happy to be partnering with them for today's video. Over the years, IXL has certainly become a class favorite, and as students finish up work or have any free time, they're always begging me to hop on IXL. IXL is an online learning program for kids in grades K through 12, which has tons of skills-based review activities, games, and lessons for teachers and parents to easily assign to their students. Right here when you log in, you can see just how many skills are available for every grade level. So when my students log into IXL after they finish their must-do for WIN, they will either need to complete a starred skill for extra practice in either math or literacy, depending on what I choose, or they can head straight to the games. So here you can see all the first grade math assignments, and I can go ahead and star different ones I want them to work on. Let's pretend we were working on number lines up to 100, and students needed to answer this question: which number comes between 54 and 56? Or type in the missing number. You can see that they have many different types of questions. I could simply star it right here and it would show up in their dashboard. When they're done with that activity, they can head right to the games, which they love to go to, and there's tons of fun and interactive games for them to play. I love IXL because my students are learning and having fun at the same time, making it a great choice for their independent learning time while I meet with groups. If you want to try out IXL with your students or kids at home, they're actually offering a free 30-day trial for teachers and an exclusive 25% off your first month or year for parents at home. Whether you are a teacher or a parent, you can take advantage of IXL's core subjects like math, science, language arts just by using the code down in my description. Make sure you check it out. Okay, so here is an example of what my WIN slide might look like. And obviously I took all the students' names out and I just put A, B, C, D. But before I get to this part, I wanna just share with you what the 4 sections are and what that might look like. So I actually just opened up a slide from March just to give you an example of what we really did. So I have 4 different groups and it will rotate each day. The 4 different groups are independent review, and I'll go over each one in a second, independent writing, collaborative math, and then collaborative reading. So those are the 4 main groups. Here they are here. And this rotation, as you can see, there are only 4 days, or there's only 4 columns. So they will do this rotation for 4 days, Monday through Thursday. And then on Friday, everybody will have a must do, may do. And so this whole side will just be the must do, whatever it is. It's usually catching up on some of these stations as needed, anything in their catch up folder. And then they'll have a may do, which will be these Fun Friday activities. So if we look at each one, the independent review, this is just what it sounds like. It is an independent review of skills we are going over this week or the previous week. So here students were working on closed syllables. So this, it just shows the 3 pages of the independent packet that they will be completing. So here we have a closed syllables. They had to go and mark it. Here they had to complete the closed syllables. These were 2-syllable words. And then we were working on addition, looks like double-digit addition without regrouping. So those are the 3 pages that would be in their packet. So every student that was in this group would grab their independent review packet, head to their seat, and complete that independently. The next group was independent writing. Now, I've talked about this a lot, but I really like having students respond to reading. So what I would do is I would link this video. This again was in March, so they read The Leprechaun's Gold. It was linked in their Seesaw for them to listen to. After they read the book, they had to go ahead and respond to the prompt. Now, I used a bunch of prompts from my seasonal writing prompts this year, and I like them because they were scaffolded. So I had some that didn't have any words, some like this one has the traceable starting point that they can write, or the writing prompt, sentence starter, whatever you want to call it. It says, if I found a pot of gold, I would. So they can trace that, and then they have to share what they would do if they found a pot of gold with a picture to match. Now, sometimes I would just cut this out down here, just the prompt here, and they would write it in their writing journal. We have foundations like Lined Journal that they would also write in and draw a picture to match. Then for collaborative math, as it sounds, collaborative is always going to be with a partner. So this one was spin in color from my place value unit. They had to go ahead and spin the wheel here. They would land on a 2-digit or 3-digit number, and then they had to find the way that it is made, either with 10s and 1s, with an addition problem, with base 10 blocks, and color it in. So they would take turns spinning and coloring back and forth until the grid was colored in. And last was collaborative reading. Now, this is a picture of their fluency folders. I actually just put their new ones. I got them ready in the last video. So students during this section would go over to their book bins, which, let me just move this over here. Book bins are stored right there, and inside their book bins will be some decodable books, their fluency folder, and then they get to pick a couple books of their own choice. And they will find a cozy spot around the classroom. They will have to read some, I think I usually say 2 or 3 passages or poems or blending lines that are in their fluency folder together. And then they will also go ahead and read some of the books together for a little bit. So those are the 4 stations. What I do is I have these slides up here because on Monday, when it's our first day, I take about 5-10 minutes and I go through each of these. Once students understand the structure and the 4 different stations, they know kind of where to grab their materials and where to head off to. But this is where I just show, what we're gonna do in each worksheet. I explain what the writing prompt is going to be. I read it for everybody so we know. I show them what the video looks like in Seesaw. For the collaborative math game, these games we often have already played once before, or like this you can see is B. I'll usually have, 2 or 3 boards of the same game. So maybe in math the previous week we'd already played spin and color, but this is the same game, just with different numbers to review. But if it is a brand new game, I'll have everybody sit in a circle and teach them how to play it. And then collaborative reading, I will explain if they have to read something specific from here. If we, for instance, got a new Foundations decodable passage that I want them to read, I'll say, okay, before you can read books from your bin, I want everybody to sit together and try to choral read, the passage of the week. So I just explain all of this together, and then I show students where they are. And once they see where they are, they go and head off to their section. So let me show you where I store all these materials. Now, if you followed my vlogs all this past year and I talked about WIN, you will know that I kept everything for WIN in this little organizer right here, right under the smartboard. That way, since I'm explaining everything up here and we're already sitting on the rug, I can just have students grab what they need and go from here. So independent, our blue one always held the worksheet packet. So what you could see from this week, it was 3 pages. It would be stapled, ready to go right there. Math would include the worksheets, the spinners, anything they needed, dice, crayons, colored pencils. So I really didn't need them like going to their seats during this time. They would just grab whatever they needed from here and head off. Same with writing, whether it was just like a half sheet prompt that they would take, and I matched it to be this yellow. So they might take the prompt and then grab their journal and go write in it. Or if it's a full sheet prompt, they would just grab it here and head to their seats. And then the green was just leftover. Sometimes it was empty. Sometimes if I had like number lines that I wanted them to use, I would store it down here for the math one. But I really didn't want them going all over the classroom. I wanted them to grab their materials, head right to their seat or where they needed to go. So independent group, they would grab theirs and they would head right to their seats and go ahead and work. Math group, they would actually usually just pull out the bin, plop it here in the middle, because often I had 4 students doing this at a time, so it'd be 2 and 2. 2 students would work here, 2 would work here, and this allowed me to quickly come over and see kind of how students were doing and if I needed to check in with them before I would head off and pull my first group. And then same with writing. Writing would be the same as independent. They grab either their paper or their prompt and journal and head right to their seats to go work independently. The only students that kind of had to move all over for this were my students doing collaborative reading. So they, once they saw their name up there, would come right over to their book bins with their partner. So usually, I'll show you on the slide again, but even though it said like student A, B, C, D, student A and B would probably be next to each other in that one, and C and D would be next to each other. So they would simply grab their book bin. In here would be their pink fluency folder, all the books they need, and this is where they can go kind of read somewhere cozy around the room. So sometimes they like to come over to the reading corner and they could read over here. This is a popular spot, but again, if it's 4 students, I have 2 over here and 2 can go somewhere else. So let me flip the camera. Some students like to go sit over there in the cozy white chairs. Some liked to sit back here, especially if my aide wasn't here, or they would sit in the rolling chair together. And then I also have little scoop chairs under here that students would get, and they would go grab a little stuffed animal and find somewhere cozy to read together. I didn't really care where they went as long as the expectation was being followed, which meant they were nice and quiet so everyone else could work and finish up what they're doing. So let me go back to the slide and show you what they do after that's complete, and also kind of how I still manage to pull groups back while they're doing this. Okay, first, just real quick, I shared what it would probably more look like, because like I said, I just typed in everybody's names, but for these 2 stations, which are collaborative, it would say student I and J, so it would say their names, Theo and Calvin, and then same with here, they would be matched up. Now for grouping students here during WIN, I don't necessarily group them in homogeneous groups. I definitely like to do it more heterogeneous, and that's because I can pull them from different areas, and also these 2 are independent anyway, and the math, doesn't really always rely on the reading group, is not always going to match up with their math skills. So that can be a different one. And then over here, students do have different things in their book bins. So if they don't have the same books, they know that when they get together, they are listening to one another read. And they all have opportunities to be able to read something in there. So like for example, if I have a higher student and a lower student together, the lower student doesn't necessarily feel uncomfortable with the higher student because they have their own things that they're reading in their fluency folder anyway. Okay, so once students go off, once they are complete, they know they get to go right to the May Do. So the May Do is different each day depending on what group they're in, and that also helps keep it fresh. So my students in the Independent Center, once they are complete with their worksheet packet, they will turn it in the Turnitin bin, and they get to go to Epic for the rest of the time. Same with my writing group. Once they are done with their writing prompt, after they've checked it and edited it, they turn it in, and then they go to Raz Kids. Same with this group over here. They will finish up their math game, and then they go to IXL. Sometimes I will have skills start in there, and other times I will just have them play math games. And then last but not least, my collaborative reading group will read together, and then they go to Kings and Queens. This game is a logic game where they basically have to take a ball and roll it from one end to the other while making things move and just figuring out how it goes. So it's difficult, but it's a lot of fun for them. So each day, if this is Monday, let's say, on Tuesday, all these students will move here. On Wednesday, that group will move here. Thursday, they'll move here. And they all rotate through, so that way they are completing all 4 WIN centers by the end of the week. Now, usually the way it works is once students are dispersed, I usually stay on the rug and make sure my math groups might fully understand the game, especially on Monday and Tuesday when that might be the first time I'm going over the directions. I make sure they are settled and ready to go, and then I pull my first group back here. So what's nice about it, even though it's 45 minutes, it probably ends up being closer to 40 minutes with, making sure that's all set up and then having to get ready for lunch, which actually we won't have to now. We'll be getting ready for specials. So same thing, we'll have a couple minutes from the backside being cut off to get ready for that, make sure we clean everything up. But it leaves us a good chunk of time to have me pull different groups at different times. So since the groups are heterogeneous, I'm kind of pulling groups from different areas. So if I happen to pull, I really try not to pull people playing the math game because they are working together and they need the other person. Unless they happen to be in the same reading group anyway, I'll pull a pair of them at a time, and then when they're done with me, they go right back to their game. If I happen to pull somebody who's doing reading over there and somebody who's doing independent, I'll pull that group, and then they just go right back to where they were. So it's about 40 minutes. They'll spend most of them will spend about 10 minutes with me. They'll spend about 10-15 minutes doing their must do, and then they get about 10-15 minutes to do their may do. So it ends up being a good chunk of time in each, because what happens is if I find that my independent station, and this does happen sometimes, let's say some of my higher students are in the independent station, they grab the worksheet and they're done with it in like 5 minutes, and I wasn't planning on meeting with them today. That would mean they had like 30-35 minutes of epic, which might be a little long for some of them. Some of them might enjoy reading for that long. Other times, if I happen to see that they really went through that pretty quickly, I will meet with one of my first groups, and then I'll call that student back, and that's where I might pull something like a leveled reader here, and I might say, hey, I want you to really focus on retelling when you get this book. So I'm going to have you go off, I'm going to have you go read this book, and then when you're done, I'm going to check in with you. So I kind of get to give them other fun things that they're doing during this time. Also during win time is when I like to do something like my math mysteries. They look like this right here, but they're just a fun way to kind of challenge students. And so some of my, again, higher students that might be finishing a lot of this work early, I kind of send them off to go do a math mystery for the week, and then they can check in with me when they are done. So I have all sorts of other fun things that they're doing, but the main structure is that must do, may do, Monday through Thursday. And then, like I said, on Friday, everyone has the same must do, may do. A lot of it is catch up time. And then for their may do, they get to pick any one of the apps that is on their iPad to kind of have fun with. It's like Fun Friday. All right, and there you have it. So that is how I run win centers or win stations in my classroom. I love it because it allows for a lot of flexibility, and students throughout the week are working on their phonics skills with decoding and encoding. And also, I don't know if you noticed, but in that independent worksheet packet, there usually are 1 or 2 phonics pages, usually one with decoding, one with encoding. In this case, I believe the ones I showed you were syllable work, so slightly different. But 2 different skills with syllable work, right? One, they had to read it and they had to mark up the word, and the other one, they had to kind of cut and paste and maneuver the different syllables to see which ones made real words. So I always, even though we're working on the same skill, I try to have different ways of kind of attacking that skill within the independent worksheet packet. And then also I always throw in a math as well. So usually 3 pages is the top of what I do. I don't usually do 4. Towards the beginning of the year, I might only have 1 or 2, 1 math and 1 phonics, but pretty quickly I move into about 3. So independent station, and then I like to have them, of course, doing some sort of writing. This is my favorite time to have them respond to reading, or they might be doing some sort of sentence scrambles. They might do, what else? They might do sentence combinations where they have 2 different sentences and they have to combine it with the word and after we've learned something like that, or the word but. But often, most of this year, I have them doing a response to reading of some kind. Or sometimes instead of a book that they're listening to, sometimes they're listening to a SciShow Kids video where it's teaching them facts about something science related or social studies related that we are currently learning about. They'll listen to that video. It's about 4 minutes long, and then write down what they've learned. So kind of synthesizing their information and turning it into writing, which I very much enjoy. I also love to see the progress throughout the year in those journals. So what we've learned at the beginning of the year, how they write it in their journal, and then what they're able to add towards the end of the year. And then they have a math station each week during WIN. And again, that reading station where they're doing some fluency work with their phonics fluency folders, and also getting to practice those decodable skills and just enjoying reading with a friend. So throughout the week, they get to touch on all of those. And then it's super flexible for me to be able to kind of give students what they need, pull groups as needed, and work on whatever we need to work on. So I would love to know from you if you have a WIN block at your school. If you do you run it, in a similar way to me? Do you run it in a different way? Let me know down in the comments. I love to learn from you, just like you will learn from me, and just hear what everybody's doing. So this is my plan for the next year, is to continue it the way I did it this past year. And if I decide to change anything, I will always let you know. Because if things get stale or if it doesn't work for this group, I will be the first one to tell you that things aren't working and I'm looking for something new. So always looking for ideas. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up so I know. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel and click that bell. That way you're notified of every new video. I am heading to Cape Cod tomorrow, and then next time I'll see you, I will be checking in with you after the first week of school, which for me will only be 2 days. So I'll be excited to kind of take you along with me, get back to a new class, and see if I can remember exactly how it's done. So I will see you in the next video. Bye.